Good morning and welcome to the School of Consciousness. Today, what we're going to be talking about is how to change your identity. And this is such an important part of self-development that often doesn't get talked about, or at least I know in my experience, I used to thought it was like a very mysterious thing. I was like, what is this changing your identity? What does that even mean? For me, it's been a journey of discovering what that actually even means in the first place, and then how do you do it? So I'm going to try and give you guys some context around what that actually means, and then we're going to talk about how do we actually change the identity. So firstly, you've got to understand that every single person in the world has an identity, which is essentially like a sense of self. And this is who you think you are consciously, but it's also who you think you are unconsciously. So your unconscious idea or program about who you are as a person, that is what your identity is. So that's going to be built off programs and things that you have learned when you were a kid. Things that happened when, in those early developmental years of your life, and then things that continue to happen through your teenage life, and even things that are continuing to happen till now. Everything in the past is essentially what creates your identity, right? Or in most cases, that's what creates your identity. And I say in most cases because you can actively work on creating a new identity for yourself. So if you are actively working on creating a new identity for yourself, then your identity is not necessarily all from the past, but it's coming from the present. So you can, in the present moment, decide, oh, I want to change my identity. I want to achieve a different result in my life. I want to have different things in my life. I want to have different relationships or different business or different career or a different financial status or anything like that. If you decide in the present moment that you want those things different in your life, you can decide to change your identity so that in the future, you are able to achieve those different results. Now, it won't happen instantly. Identity work is very deep, like unconscious work that you do on yourself to change the way that you see yourself. But the first thing you have to understand is that you already have a self-image, right? They call it a self-image. I think I got a book here about this actually. Um, it's called Psycho-Cybernetics, right? This book here, Psycho-Cybernetics. It talks a lot about the self-image, right? And the subconscious mind and how you can tap into the subconscious mind to essentially recreate your self-image. And self-image is just another word for identity. This is what I'm saying. We all have one. We all have a self-image. You have a way that you look at yourself, and that determines what kind of life you live. And this is not just a conscious thing of like, oh yeah, I'm Josh Holiday, and I'm in my house, and I have a wife and a daughter, and like, run a business and stuff like that. I'm conscious of that, but there's a deeper level as well, which is like uh, an unconscious belief system or program about who I am and what I'm capable of achieving. It's a lot around like your self-worth, your self-esteem, and those deep unconscious programs that you might have learned through your younger years. Generally from your environment, maybe what your parents told you, what your friends like, what your friends reflected back to you, what the teachers maybe reflected back to you. All of that stuff is building on your identity and your self-image. So if you're not where you want to be in life, or you're thinking that you're living a life that's maybe not like true to the self that you really intend to be or you desire to be, and you feel like you're stuck in a loop or you're stuck in a pattern and there's the same things happening over and over again, and my relationships aren't working and the business isn't working or the career is not working or where's the money, like, and we're stuck in this loop and all of these things happening over and over again, and we want a different result, we desire a different result in our life. However, the same patterns just keep playing out, the same loops keep playing out. If that's happening for you, then it's very likely that there is some unconscious blocks, right? And usually that goes beyond the conscious, right? Or beyond like what you're aware of, beyond the physical reality. And it goes to a deeper level, right, of thoughts and feelings. But also a deeper level than thoughts and feelings is the beliefs that you hold. And then the beliefs are attached to your identity. Now, the tricky thing with this is it's all usually unconscious, right? So you're not consciously aware of it. You're not like, oh yeah, I know that thing. It's like it's the blind spots, right? People call it shadow work. It's these darker parts of ourself that we, not darker, but like more mysterious, deeper parts of ourself that we're not even really aware of there. But if you're here with me today and you're interested in this kind of work, then that's part of the journey, right? It's actually seeking to go into the unknown, because that's what the unconscious is. It's the unknown parts of yourself. So if you're courageous enough to face those unknown parts of yourself, or to do a little digging into those unknown parts of yourself, that's when you can really start to figure out, okay, well, what is my unconscious program and how do I change that? So for example, for me, I've done a lot of this work, and one of the big stories that I had was not good enough, right? Some events happened when I was a child that made me feel not good enough, and then went to school and had different social experiences that made me feel not good enough. And then I grew up and into my teenage years and early 20s, and same kind of things happening over and over again. Not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And for the most part, I was unconscious to all of that. I was just like, I didn't really understand. I wasn't aware. I wasn't cognizant of like why it was happening. And I didn't even really know that it could be different, right? It was just, that was just happening. It was just my life. I was just living in this loop of like doing these things that in hindsight, I can reflect back on and say I was doing those things because I was seeking validation from others. I was seeking like external validation, or I needed to feel good enough. And the way that I got that feeling of being good enough was in the older days, my old self would people please and try to please everyone else and keep everyone else happy, and do things that I didn't want to do because that's what other people, wanted from me, or that's what I thought that they wanted from me, which they probably didn't even care, to be honest. But that was my learned programming around my self-image, around my identity. I learned that that was the way that I got validation. So that became my identity. So I'm drinking, I'm doing drugs, I'm, doing all these different things that I didn't really want to do, that didn't feel aligned with my true self. But I just did it because that's how I learned to survive in the world, essentially. That was how I learned to maintain social relationships. That's how I learned to, maintain like my identity, because that was my identity, right? It was like this feeling of not good enough. Back then, I didn't know that, but now I know that because I've become conscious of it. I've become aware of it. I'm actively like working on self-development to develop myself. So I'm looking at these kinds of things, right? I'm developing my self-image because, now I'm getting, into like later in my life. I'm still super young, right? I'm only 30, but I'm, starting to think, okay, well, I really want these things in my life. I want a healthy family, right? I want a good relationship. I want a business. I want some, some things in my life. I want good friends that are healthy. Like I want all these things in my life now, right? So I'm aware of that. The old self wasn't getting all of that, right? There's a concept in self-development. It's called be, do, have. So you need to be a certain person, you need to do certain things, and that's how you will have what you want to have. So the old self, in my case, right, wasn't having the things that he really wanted to have. I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. My relationships were unhealthy. My friends were unhealthy. I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. I had no success with business. I had no success with girls. Right? Nothing was. I wasn't having the things that I wanted to have, and the reason why was because I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do, and I wasn't even being the person who I needed to be. So this be, do, have concept is really like most people start with like the have. Like, I want to have this thing. Maybe you've got certain things that you want to have. I want to have the relationship. I want to have the business, the career, the money, whatever it is, right? You want to have those things, but you're not getting them. And you're like, why? Why am I not getting them? Why am I stuck in this loop or this pattern? And I'm not getting the things that I want to get, not having the things that I want to have. You got to go back a level, to the doing. Are you doing the things that kind of person would do? If you had healthy relationships, if you had healthy friendships, if you had a business, or a great career, or lots of money or whatever, if you had all of those things, are you actually now in the present doing the things that you would need to do to have those things? That's one question you can ask. But then we go back a level deeper, which is the being. Are you being the person you need to be to do those things, to have the result? Now, the being is the self-image, is the identity. The being, who you are being, that is your identity. So are you being the person that you need to be? For example, right, if I want to have a family, am I being like a healthy role model of what a father would be, what a husband would be? Am I a committed person? Right? Am I committed to my wife and my daughter and my family? Am I open and honest in my communication? Am I being emotionally vulnerable when I need to be with my wife? Just these are some examples, right? You can apply them to your own life, but if you're a woman, it might be slightly different, right? It could be same as well, though, right? Commitment's a big thing for relationships anyway. But when it comes to business, right, it's a different thing. Am I being a business owner? Am I being consistent with my work? Am I showing up every day? Am I keeping myself accountable, right? If you want to be healthy, same thing. Am I going to the gym every day? Like, am I being someone who, plans out their nutrition and their food and their gym schedule? Like, are you being the person that you need to be? That's the key, right? So you got to take a real honest look at yourself and you need to ask yourself, okay, am I actually being the person who I need to be? And I say a real honest look because oftentimes your ego will get in the way or your pride will get in the way. And you might be like, yeah, I am. Or like, oh, you start to get a bit confused because you're not sure. And maybe you have to humble yourself a little bit to realize maybe you're not being the person that you need to be. Maybe then you're not doing the things that you need to do. That's why you're not having the results that you want to have. So it's all about this self-reflection as well, right? You've got to take a good hard look at yourself. This is why self-development is so great, right? I really think that self-development is an amazing thing for people to work on because you start to have that self-reflection. You start to look at yourself. You start to write down, okay, you start to get clarity on what you actually want to have in your life. And then from there, you can break it down and go, okay, well, what do I need to do? And who do I need to be? Right. So the being like is the fast track. This is the identity. So how do we change our identity, right? You need to actually look at who you are being. Start at the highest level. Like I said, people always start at the have. The have is the lowest level. The physical reality is like the slowest, densest form that we have access to, right? The 3D world, it's like very slow, very dense. It's like full of matter. But the doing, right? It's the action, right? Involves your thoughts and feelings. Okay, what am I going to do? That's the feeling, the thought around taking the action. Right, it's a bit of a higher level, and what I mean by that is kind of like, let's say, the have is the physical, right? You want to have the relationship, you want to have the car or the money or the whatever it is, the job. That's they're physical things, right? So it's like 3D, right? Having, doing, right? These are the actions that come from you. It's like almost we're starting to be more of an internal thing, right? I am doing these things, right? So you've got to think about it and you've got to, get over you've got to start to create a clear thought about what you want to do because the things that you do always start as a thought. It's always a thought first and then you do the thing that you thought about, right? And you're going to feel a certain way about that. So we're kind of coming out of this like 3D matter world and we're coming up a level into the mind, right? The thoughts, the feelings, the actions, the behaviors. It's starting to go from the external of the have, what we externally having, to the internal of like what you are doing from within, what you are doing, right? And then that's not even the highest level because it goes up another level to the being. Who are you being? And this is essentially, like I said, it's a construct. It's a mental construct of who you are, your identity, right? It's a kind of a subconscious program of who you are. So it's not physical at all. It's an idea about who you are. So and that's where we want to change because like I said, the 3D world or the what we have, the material world, it's very dense, it's very slow. It takes a long time for a tree to grow. It takes a long time for a human to grow, right? However, when you come up into the different level of the mind, you could close your eyes and you could imagine a baby being born, and then you could imagine a 20-year-old, like that baby growing up into a 20-year-old, and you could then imagine that 20-year-old growing to a 40-year-old, and you could then imagine that 40-year-old going to a 60-year-old, and then passing away. So in about 5 seconds, you could imagine a whole lifetime. That's true, right? In about a few seconds, you could close your eyes and you could imagine a whole lifeline, like a whole lifetime playing out. So it's non-physical, it's imaginary, but it's also fast, right? It's a faster way to imagine things, right? Like you could imagine your relationship playing out. You could imagine having kids. You could imagine a family. You could imagine all of this stuff, and it's just boom right there. But in the physical world, it takes ages to get that stuff, right? So we want to work with the non-physical, the level of the mind and the identity and the being, because we can imagine who we want to be. And if you imagine every single day, every single morning, who you want to be, and you set the intention, I'm going to be this person today, it will still take time to manifest into physical reality because that's the nature of physical reality. It's dense, it takes time. We're talking about manifestation now a little bit, right? Changing your identity is one of the most powerful ways to manifest anything, right? Changing your identity is really a key to manifestation. And that's what we're talking about now. So you can imagine in your mind all of the things that you want to have, right? Blah, 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 blah. But then you want to create like an image, a self-image, an identity. Who do I need to be, right? And then every day you wake up and you focus on being that person. Okay, I'm writing it down. I am this person. I am this person. I am this person, right? And you've created a clear image of the identity that you want to embody. And every single day you jot it down. I'm going to be this person. And it might be something as simple as, if you're an anxious person right now and you want to be a calm person. I work with heaps and heaps of people who are just anxious and all they want is just calm, right? So, you know, that's a really easy thing to manifest. It's one of the first things I ever manifested as well, right? I manifested just being calm and peaceful and confident, not even having anything, right? I just wanted to be calm and peaceful and confident within myself. So I did a lot of journaling. I woke up every day. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be peaceful. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be confident. And I was shifting my identity from someone who was an anxious person to someone who was just a calm, relaxed, peaceful person. That was the first thing I manifested in my life. But it has to start as the being, right? The imagination of who you are being. And when you do this, when you're imagining a new self, which is what we're talking about here, when you imagine a new self, you're creating a new mental program. So all the old mental programs, you can't change what happened in the past, right? There's nothing that you can do to change what happened in the past. The past is the past and it is what it is. But what you can do is become present. And when you become present, you can imagine a new self. And when you feed the mind with these new imaginations about the new self and you do it consistently, you make it a habit and a routine. Habit is one of the best ways to reprogram the subconscious mind. Habit. It's really simple. It's just habit, right? So if you make it a habit to every day imagine a new version of yourself, and every morning you're being consistent with that. You're in a routine. You're imagining who you want to be, and then you're actually setting the intention at the start of the day to be that person. And you actually consciously put a lot of conscious effort into like reprogramming the mind to be that person. Then you start to do what that person does. Today, I'm going to do what this person would do. I'm going to do what my new self would do. You will eventually have what you want to have. Right? But it all starts with the being, then the doing, and the having. And this works for everyone. The only reason why it wouldn't work is if you weren't able to be consistent with it, right? If you let the old programs run the story, because the old programs are very strong, right? But you have to be stronger because the old programs will try to like stop you, right? Or tell you that you're not consistent or you can't keep a routine or you can't develop new habits or you can't be a new self. And the old program does that because the old program wants to keep you safe. The old program is essentially like it's this idea of who you are currently. And there's a false perception which you need to overcome, which is if I change, that is going to be a threat to my safety. Because that's what the subconscious mind will do. The subconscious mind wants to keep you safe. So it will actually try to stop you from changing because it's really interested in like self-preservation. So this is why you need to have the courage to go beyond, to like reach beyond the current version of yourself, to go into that uncomfortable place, right? That's what everyone says. It's such a cliche, but it's so true. You need to go beyond yourself. You need to go into the uncomfortable place, and that's where the growth will happen. That requires you need to get over yourself. So if you want to change your identity into a new self, you want to be a new person, you want to do new things, you want to have new things, that's great. That's a new self. And you can totally imagine that and create that with intention. But the one thing that will hold you back is you need to let go of the old self as well. And so that often means letting go of physical things as well. Sometimes you need to let go of relationships. Sometimes you need to let go of friendships. Sometimes you need to take yourself out of certain social environments. Sometimes you need to leave a job. Like, and that's the hard stuff, right? That's the hard stuff. But you got to let go because there's certain things in your life just aren't meant for you, right? And if you want to grow, right? If you want to grow, you're going to change your frequency. You're going to change your whole resonance. And so you enter into a new frequency. If you're committed to it, if you're committed to changing your identity and changing into a new version of yourself and creating a new reality for yourself, you will enter into a new frequency and a new resonance. And so some of the things in the old resonance and the old frequency don't belong there. It's not a personal thing. It's just a fact. And I can tell you another personal story from my own life. I was someone who held on. I held on to a lot of friendship groups. I held on to a lot of relationships. I held on to like a lot of behaviors and stuff that I used to do. And in my head, I had this thing where I was like, oh man, I really don't want to like just cut people out. Like I've been friends with these guys for like 15 years. There's a certain group of friends that I just don't really hang out with anymore. And I really had a lot of resistance to letting go of those friendship groups because in my head, I was like, oh, I don't really want to cut these people out. Like, they've been my friends for ages. I've been through so much with these people. And so I've really hesitated on letting go of them to the point where I actually didn't ever consciously let go of them until what I think happened was I was just in a whole different frequency and a whole different resonance. And there just became this real incoherence between like where I was and where they were. So, and I still would try and hang out with some of my mates and stuff like that. But every time I would hang out with them, there was just an incoherence. There was a distortion in the field. Like it was like I wasn't meant to be there. And the communication got weird and everything just got weird. And it was almost like the resonance of the frequency, just like it was like this is not on the same frequency. So we just ended up just drifting apart. And it wasn't like I ever made a firm decision to cut them out. But it just happened. And I think it happened just because I was changing my frequency and my resonance and my identity. And they just didn't fit on the same frequency anymore. And nothing against them. Like, they're just not doing the things that I want to do. They're just not being the kind of people that I want to be. And so there was this natural, just like drifting apart. So that will happen as well. And, you'll have opportunities, right? There might be relationships. There might be things that happen, like little things that come up for you. And there's always going to be the opportunity. Okay, do I move forward towards the new self or do I hold on to the old self? Something you got to be mindful of. So this is a pretty overarching introduction into, how to change your identity. So I've got a couple of questions here, or I got at least one question from Kath. So I'm going to answer that. I have tried to develop myself for years, and I have, but as soon as I get to know someone and they ask me about my family, I have two options: keep the real truth from who is asking, which feels wrong, it doesn't align with me, but sometimes I have to, or tell the truth and watch that person literally not cope with what they hear. In terms of identity, what would you do differently about that? As it's my identity and what's shaped me, even though I try so hard to be the person I want to be and break away from my family to be stronger about my own identity, your childhood or family is what shapes identity. How do I deal with that? Great question, Kath. And I think I kind of answered it just then, right? Like, the only thing that you can ever do is focus on yourself, right? And being the person who you want to be. And when you're really confident in who you are and who you want to be and what this new self is, when you meet people, you'll be able to communicate what's going on with your family without feeling an attachment to it, right? So what you've just said, the question that you've asked suggests to me that maybe when you are talking about your family, there's still some unresolved shame or guilt about them, which is probably then being projected, even if it's not like you're not consciously doing it. Maybe it's like an unconscious projection, or it's like maybe a bit of doubt or guilt or shame or something. You're not really confident in communicating about your family, which suggests that there's some unprocessed stuff, right? Now, there's another alternate reality that exists where you've totally healed or processed some of the stuff around your family. Now, I don't know exactly what that is, but there is a reality that exists where you're comfortable with that, because you are comfortable with yourself. So you know who you are and you know who you want to be. And, you've got your family and your family is your family, right? But when you're communicating with like new relationships and stuff like that, you want to come from a place of inner confidence within yourself, right? inner peace within yourself. Like you are who you are, and you know your own value, and you're able to communicate that without then even unconsciously maybe projecting, some of the trauma from the family. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that hits home. It's hard to answer it like, in a really detailed way, because we're not like talking, but that would be my answer to the question that you've asked. It's right. When you get yourself into a state where you're feeling confident, where you're feeling you're able to communicate, there's no negative charge around your family issues, right? Because if there's a negative charge or an emotional charge around your issues with your family still within you, that will either consciously or unconsciously projected in your communication with others, right? When you know your own value and you know your own worth and you're confident in who you are and that you've healed and processed trauma from the past with your family, you'll be able to communicate with others in a confident way. So I hope that answers your question. It's simply continue to work on yourself and your healing journey till you get to a point where you can comfortably talk about your family without emotional charge. Any other questions or anything like that, guys? Pop them in the chat box. Kath, let me know if I've answered that right. That's pretty much the session today. We've done about half an hour. I hope that's been helpful for you guys. I trust that it has been. Yeah, these School of Consciousness sessions happen every Wednesday, and you can go on my YouTube and find all of the replays, or you can join our School of Consciousness community. I've just started the community, so I'll just share with you guys really quickly the School of Consciousness community because it's something that I've just created recently, and it's going to be a hub for everything School of Consciousness related, right? So these calls, all of the replays, everything like that, you can access the community, and it is right here. So there's a community page. I'll show you here. There's a classroom where I've got all of the School of Consciousness replays in here. So you can go through and watch them in order. Right. This is I think this call that we're on right now is our 16th call. So yeah, all of the episodes are in here, and you can watch them back. There's actually a lot of great stuff in there. There's also the calendar. So, if you want to find a link for the calls really easily, you can just find them in here. And the way that you can join is by going to this page, which if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put it into the description. Otherwise, obviously I'll put it on my Instagram stories and stuff like that. If you're on my email list, you'll get it. Or if you're already working with me, then you've already got it. So that's it, guys. Thank you. And I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful Wednesday and a great week. Bye.